Hello guys, welcome back to our anime moments. Guys, please like the video and subscribe to my channel. Today is explanation of upcoming episode of Soul Land 2 Peerless Tang Men based on novel. So let's start. Skydream tossed his head from side to side. Create life? That's not possible, and neither am I the creator. How do I put it? I can call this pseudo-life creation, I guess. My life origin imprint has been preserved extremely well. Under such circumstances, I can be considered independent after completing the pact with you. The Snow Empress life imprint integrated with her embryo when she was converting to it, and her life imprint ultimately dissipated with her divine sense when the polar reversal happened, a situation that will definitely arise when human soul masters assimilate spirits. I'm different, as I had already fused with you beforehand, and I was a lot more powerful than you were back then, so my life origin imprint was excellently preserved. It is the reason why I can rely on my own life energy to absorb the origin energy of heaven and earth to sustain my own life energy after existing independently from our pact. However, that doesn't mean that I can create life. I don't have to rely on your strength anymore, but I still have to rely on this pact between us. My body will crumble without this pact, and that also means that everyone will still perish if you die, me, the Snow Empress, and the Ice Empress, who has yet to awaken. I'm different from them because I can leave your body for a short period of time, and I don't have to return to your body on normal days, although these are only the main differences. Of course, I have more autonomy. Even though I've given my spiritual imprint to you and I can no longer unleash all those spiritual type abilities by myself, my life energy has given me another way to help you. I'm a million-year spirit, and also the only million-year spirit on the entire continent. I can't be entirely useless, can I? Skydream was feeling a little proud at this moment. Release your martial soul and take a look. Hui Yuhao followed his instructions and released his spirit eyes. He was the only person in the room, so there was no need to hide the color of his soul rings. 5 soul rings appeared one after another, 1 white, and 4 black soul rings. His imitation had become a 10,000-year soul skill when he absorbed Skydream's spiritual power. However, Hui Yuhao had no attention for his 4 black soul rings. His eyes were immediately fixed upon his first white million-year soul ring. Skydream jumped lightly and flew up before Hui Yuhao's eyes. The soul ring has become solid. This is the power of my million-year spirit. Watch carefully. Skydream's body contorted as he spoke, and he landed on the solidified soul ring. His body immediately turned golden as he started circling around the solidified soul ring. Circle after circle of golden light began encircling the first soul ring, and the soul ring actually turned golden in the blink of an eye. The soul ring drifted into the air and paused for a moment above Hui Yuhao's head before floating forwards, and a golden layer of light covered the entire soul ring, transforming into a golden shield that was about half a meter in diameter as it hovered in front of Hui Yuhao. A shield? Hui Yuhao asked with astonishment. Life-reflecting shield. This is my spirit's ability. What do you think? The name is really cool, isn't it? Sounds pretty normal, Hui Yuhao answered truthfully. Normal? Skydream's voice became several pitches higher. You actually think it sounds normal? Do you know that my life-reflecting shield uses my own life energy as its foundations, and it's completed by using your spiritual sea as a framework? It can reflect any physical and spiritual attack. If your opponent is weaker than you are, everything will be reflected, and the attack will be partially reflected even if your opponent is stronger than you are. You have to take everything else, but the life-reflecting shield will absorb and dispel part of the attack, and my life energy will take the hit. The strike will never touch you unless my life energy can't take it anymore. Hui Yuhao's eyes widened. This wasn't just better than normal, that was a godly skill that could protect his life. However, Hui Yuhao immediately thought about a few issues, and hurriedly asked, Brother Skydream, what's the surface area that this shield can cover? How many times can I use it in one day? If my opponent's attack is too strong, will you get hurt? All right. Hui Yuhao acknowledged. He was already extremely satisfied despite that limitation. In the end, a soul skill couldn't be all-powerful, as wouldn't one be invincible if that was possible? Skydream's soul skill was already a great boost to his defensive capabilities. Skydream yawned. All right, that's all. I'm going to sleep now, don't disturb me. His body stretched as he spoke, landing on Hui Yuhao's left hand as he spoke. He wrapped himself 5 times around Hui Yuhao's 4th finger, transforming into a multi-spiral jade ring. If one didn't know what it was and perceived it with the naked eye, nobody would be able to tell that this was actually a life form. Hui Yuhao was a little exasperated and at a loss as he stared at Skydream. He decided to pick this place. Hu Yuhao was still wearing his Starlight Sapphire storage-type soul tool on his middle finger on the same hand. He was now wearing 2 rings on the same hand, and he was starting to look like a parvenu. Can you find another place to rest, brother Skydream? Why don't you return to my spiritual sea to sleep? Hu Yuhao probed. No. I'm not going back there, it's so boring inside. I will not go back unless you can wake her up. Furthermore, I need to absorb nutrients from heaven and earth to sustain my life energy in my semi-life form state. Are you asking me to absorb your life energy from within your spiritual sea? When Skydream mentioned the Ice Jade Empress Scorpion, Hu Yuhao hurriedly asked, how is the Ice Empress, brother Skydream? Is she all right? Skydream sounded a little gloomy as he said, she's all right, but she expended too much energy when she burned her origin back then, so she needs a longer time in hibernation to recover. If you come across any ice-type herbs or whatnot, you should eat more of them, as that will help her recover. Oh, I miss her so much. I am going to find her in my dreams, so you better not disturb me. When you want to use the life-reflecting shield, just release your martial soul and channel soul power into my body. I will release the shield naturally, all right. You can go ahead and sleep, and I'll get something delicious for you to eat afterwards. Hu Yuhao stared a little helplessly at Skydream. He had lived for 1,000,000 years, but he had probably spent more than 999,000 years sleeping. Hey, wait a minute. Skydream was just about to fall asleep when he abruptly sprang up from Hu Yuhao's finger and hovered before him. His tiny golden eyes were full of doubt and confusion as he silently levitated above Hu Yuhao's left hand, as if he were trying to sense something. What's wrong, brother Skydream? Skydream shook his head and signaled for him to be quiet. Skydream drifted forward after he turned golden and landed on the Starlight Sapphire ring on the middle finger of Hu Yuhao's left hand. He flew into the air once more after a short moment. His voice sounded solemn as he said, why do you have a spiritual imprint in your ring, Yuhao? No, this should be a spiritual seal, and it's extremely powerful as well. Do you know that it's dangerous for you if other spiritual imprints remain attached to you? They can spy on you, and they can even trigger some things in your body to cause you harm. Maybe they will even choose the most important checkpoints of your cultivation to disrupt you. Quickly, take it out. I will help you dispel that spiritual seal. Spiritual seal? I don't think there's any, Hu Yuhao answered in shock. His spiritual power was formidable, and there was no way he wouldn't know if someone had left a spiritual seal on any of his possessions. Hu Yuhao suddenly thought about something. He realized what was going on, and he said, I know what you're referring to. There is no need to worry, brother Skydream. He raised his left hand as he spoke. The Starlight Sapphire ring flickered with blue light, and a tiny pouch appeared in his hands. It was the one Wang Donga had handed to him back then. Skydream's head swayed faintly, and he immediately nodded and said, yes, this is the one. What's this? Hu Yuhao said, the Clear Sky sect leader asked Wang Donga to pass it to me. It's a pouch, and I don't know what's written inside. Uncle Niu Qian added a seal so that Wang Donga wouldn't take a sneak peek at its contents, but I can't open it yet because my cultivation isn't high enough. I reckon it probably contains some words of encouragement. Skydream insisted on his opinion and said, it's not a good thing for you to have someone else's spiritual seal on you. Let me help you open it. Hu Yuhao contemplated momentarily, and he figured that opening the pouch wouldn't hurt, and there was no harm in taking a look. He nodded and said, all right, I'll have to trouble you, then. But I can't open it with my spiritual power. Brother Skydream, don't you need to borrow my spiritual power? Skydream said proudly, it's not because you don't have enough spiritual power to open it, it's because your spiritual power control isn't there yet. This spiritual seal can't stump me. Skydream's body bounced lightly as he spoke, and he landed on the pouch as his translucent body flickered with golden light. Hu Yuhao's eyes glowed at the same time, and a radiant golden light gradually flowed out along with his spiritual power. He could feel that his spiritual power was undergoing peculiar transformations as it was channeled into Skydream. That's compression. Hu Yuhao's spiritual power began to compress under Skydream's direction. Skydream had given his spiritual origin to Hu Yuhao, but he still had the most substantial spiritual imprint, one that had been baptized by 1,000,000 years of life. Unless the Calamity Necromancer Electrolux came back to life, there was nobody else in the world that could compare to Skydream in terms of spiritual power manipulation. Yes, this was a form of spiritual power manipulation. Spiritual power was an energy that originated from the spirit world, and was presented as far more abstract and illusory compared to soul power. The effects that spiritual power could achieve often couldn't be compared to soul power on the same level. The energy that belonged to the spiritual realm and soul power were like two parallel lines that did not intersect. If soul masters were to choose which power they wanted to boost, almost all soul masters would choose soul power. This didn't mean soul power was stronger than spiritual power, it was because soul power was a lot easier to control and manipulate than spiritual power. However, the seal couldn't stump Skydream. The compressed spiritual power became increasingly focused under Skydream's control and gradually drilled into the seal, unraveling it from the inside. This was a great opportunity for Hu Hao. Skydream was controlling his spiritual power after all. And this meant that Hu Hao could clearly feel the entire manipulation process. This was greatly beneficial to learn how to manipulate spiritual power. Hu Hao began to feel a little dizzy from time to time as spiritual power continued flowing out. He could feel that his spiritual C's level was plummeting, but he wasn't worried at all. Skydream had a complete understanding of Hu Hao's spiritual power, and he naturally wouldn't do something that he wasn't confident of and would never hurt Hu Hao either. An hour passed, then a soft ding sound could be heard as the pouch's mouth emanated a strange golden light. This golden light transformed into a green streak before it disintegrated into fine specks and gradually vanished into the air. The golden light on Skydream's body disappeared along with the lights. He grunted and said, "The seal was strong, but it couldn't stump me. Don't be too hasty to look at the pouch, Hu Hao, you should meditate as soon as possible. Wait for your spirit to recover before anything else. If you don't recover from this extent of spiritual power consumption as soon as possible, it will affect your spiritual C's volume." He returned to the fourth finger on Hu Hao's left hand as he spoke, and transformed back into a jade ring. Hu Hao had intended to meditate even if Skydream hadn't reminded him. He had become a little dizzy, and his vision even became a little blurry from all the spiritual power consumption. Hu Hao crossed his legs and sat down as he focused his eyes and looked inwards. The dizziness and fatigue helped him enter his meditative state even faster than he normally did, and his consciousness became more focused, while his spiritual C gradually returned to its usual calm. The pouch shone with faint light, which gradually grew pale as it laid silently on the bed beside Hu Hao. The pain in Hu Hao's chest and between his ribs was taken care of by his powerful regenerative abilities by the time he woke up from meditation, while more than half of his spiritual power had been restored. The positive energy of honesty gained the upper hand in the end. Very often, lies could solve problems temporarily, but they were usually unable to solve problems permanently. Lies would pile up day after day, and the day would come when all these lies would erupt, and it would be very difficult to remedy the situation once that day arrived. Hu Hao made up his mind, and was no longer despondent. He hadn't done anything wrong in theory. If Donga was still unsatisfied, perhaps he would just touch her a few times too. A strange smile appeared on Hu Hao's face as he thought about this, and his heart began to beat faster. Donga isn't as developed as Wang Chioa. I wonder how it will feel, That's way too far. How can you be so indecent and wretched, Hu Hao? How can you have these thoughts in your mind? He slapped himself lightly across the face, and pulled back his wandering mind. There would always be a path to take when the time came, and there was a solution to everything. He could probably fix a few sumptuous meals for Donga, and he could say some nice and sweet things to her, and this whole thing would blow over. Hu Hao lowered his head and glanced at the extra ring on his left hand that Skydream had formed, making sure that last night wasn't a dream, and his mood immediately became better. Skydream was awake now, he had changed himself into a spirit, and he had given Hu Hao another soul skill. The big competition was coming soon, so this was as good news could get. Hu Hao had his own plans for the future. However, he had never told anyone about them, not even Wang Donga knew about them. No matter what happened in the future, this season's competition was the most important task he had to face at the moment. Oh, yes. I have yet to see what's inside the pouch. Hu Hao immediately recalled the pouch that had been opened the previous night when he looked at Skydream's ring, and hurriedly returned to his bed. Donga's parents finally found a herb that could fix Donga's internal wounds during one of their perennial attempts. The only problem was that this herb is too challenging to retrieve, as the criteria were too difficult to satisfy. This herb can only be retrieved by a man that loves her, and this man has to use his blood to retrieve this herb. Forcefully plucking this plant will damage it, and it will lose its medicinal effects. It has a very apt name, it's called yearning heartbroken grass. We've tried every method we could think of to retrieve it, but every attempt ended up being fruitless. In order to retain this last strand of hope, we could only swallow it down and wait for the person that loves Donga to appear. When Donga passes this pouch to you, she will be deeply in love with you and will no longer holding anything back. I don't know how you feel about Donna, as she has always been a girl dressed like a guy before this. However, if you do open this pouch, and when you read this letter, ask yourself whether your love for Donna is deep enough and focused enough. I implore you as Donna's senior that you retrieve that herb for her. This is for your future happiness and also for Donna's life. Donna's parents are always outside searching for substitute medicines, but Donna is 17 years old now. She's nearing 20, and her parents haven't returned. Hope is gradually slipping away. Therefore, both Titan and I were exceptionally delighted when we first saw you, as you have given us real hope. This was the reason we tested you in all the ways that we did, so that we could assess whether your mentality would allow you to become Donna's savior. We were quite satisfied with the outcome. At least, we saw many virtues on you before you left. Donna has made a great choice, and you're a man that is worthy of her. However, Donna's life is starting to count down, and I plead that you retrieve that yearning heartbroken grass, so that Donna's hidden injury can be fixed. The reason why there's a seal on this letter is because Donna doesn't know about all this. We wanted to let her grow up happily, so we have never told her about this. We love her too much, and our only hope is that she can grow up peacefully and happily. I sincerely plead that you do not tell her the truth before you bring back that yearning heartbroken grass. Even if you don't successfully complete this task in the end, we hope that she will be happy and peaceful in her last days. Huayuhao's hands clenched unwittingly at this point. He had not expected that Donna had such a fatal injury, and that she only had a little more than 2 years left to live. This was something that Huayuhao couldn't accept, no matter what. He grit his teeth and forced his tears back, as he knew that he had to be strong at times like these. He knew that even if he was left with a single thread of hope, he had to bring back the herb that could save Donna's life. He bit down hard on his lower lip and left a deep bite mark. He was stimulated by the pain, and refocused his attention as he continued reading the parchment. The map below depicts where the yearning heartbroken grass is located. This is a place filled with danger and peril, and it's also a place inhabited by soul beasts, while the exact location where the yearning heartbroken grass grows is even more hazardous. There is a detailed introduction of the plants that grow in the area below the map. You have to try and find a book when you reach it that Donna's father personally left it behind. The book details all sorts of herbs and poisonous plants and their differences, and it will also guide you to find the yearning heartbroken grass. There are detailed instructions and signs on the map that will lead you to where the book is hidden. You have to find the book first before you search for the yearning heartbroken grass. Also, please remember not to venture too far inside. That place is charged with the origin energy of heaven and earth, and these herbs and poisonous plants have been living there for far too long, to the point where some have evolved into plant-type soul beasts. These soul beasts will bring great danger and trouble to you. Please go, if you truly love Donna. We will await your good news. Do take care of yourself. Where's he off to? The pair of huge blue eyes flowed with doubt and suspicion. HMPH. That bastard. That day I can't let him off the hook. I'm going to follow him. The owner of this pair of blue eyes flew into the sky while these thoughts ran through her mind. She raced across the lake in pursuit of Huayuhao. Huayuhao didn't wish to stick around for a moment longer. He immediately soared into the sky once he left Shrek Academy, and he extended the flying-type soul tool behind his back while he infused it with soul power. The soul tool propelled his body into the air, and he started flying into the distance. Huayuhao! Come down right now! An exclamation rang out behind him. Huayuhao was momentarily stunned. However, he had already raced more than 10 meters away, and he quickly controlled his flying-type soul tool to turn around. He looked back and saw a figure with flowing blue hair drifting toward him. Donna! Huayuhao shouted in surprise. Wang Donga's image filled every corner of his mind at this moment. I'm not your Donna. Tell me, what should we do about what happened yesterday? Wang Chua said angrily. Huayuhao only realized that Wang Donga wasn't the one pursuing him. It was Wang Chua, who he had taken advantage of the previous day. I'm sorry, Chua. Yesterday was all my fault. However, I have something important to do right now. I will take all punishment and accept whatever you want to do to me when I come back. I need to go. He turned back around as he spoke, and his flying-type soul tool erupted with light once more. He couldn't be bothered with the entanglement between Wang Chua and himself. There was nothing more important than finding the herb that could save Wang Donga's life. Wang Chua could clearly see his frustrated and worried look. A thought crossed her mind as she stomped her right foot on the ground, and her body bolted forward. Wang Chua was unrivaled amongst others of the same level in terms of explosiveness over short distances. Hu Yuhao's flying-type soul tool still had an acceleration process, and he was only just speeding up before Wang Chua arrived behind him and grabbed his shoulder. "Don't mess around, Wang Chua. I really have something important to do," Hu Yuhao exclaimed angrily. Wang Chua was equally furious. "I'm messing around? Stop finding excuses for yourself. You took advantage of me yesterday. You're going to let it go just like that?" Hu Yuhao had to drop back to the ground because of her forceful pressure. He shook his body vigorously and broke free from Wang Chua's grip. "Wang Chua, I really have something very urgent to attend to. I've already said that you can do anything you want to me when I return. Is that not enough?" Hu Yuhao's voice was solemn and intense. Wang Chua was momentarily stunned. This was the first time she had seen Hu Yuhao like this, and she asked doubtfully, "Even the color of your face has changed. What's up?" Hu Yuhao's expression was truly discolored. His face was pale and tinged with green. His expression was as dark as it could get. Hu Yuhao shook his head and said, "This has nothing to do with you. There's a place that I have to go to, and I have to go right now. I can't delay for another second. That's it." He turned around and prepared to leave as he spoke. Wang Chua blocked his path in a flash. "You can't leave unless you explain it to me." Wang Chua took the soul tool, then she asked a little embarrassingly, "How do I wear this?" Hu Yuhao was rendered speechless. This girl doesn't know a thing about soul tools. He was far too worried, but he couldn't afford to piss off this girl before him. He had taken advantage of her yesterday, and that gave him a guilty conscience. Furthermore, he wasn't entirely confident of defeating Wang Chua if they actually fought. He felt a little helpless as he stepped forward and helped Wang Chua put the flying-type soul tool on as he briefed her on how to use it. With that, he soared into the sky and infused as much soul power into his own flying-type soul tool as he could before he raced towards the east as fast as he could. Hu Yuhao felt a lot better once he was surging through the air. He wasn't that concerned about Wang Chua not being able to catch up. It would actually be better if she couldn't, as that would save him a lot of trouble. Even if she could, she would be of great help with her abilities. The only thing in his mind was to reach his destination as quickly as possible, and he couldn't be bothered with anything else. This was Wang Chua's first time interacting with soul tools. However, one had to admit that she was very adaptable. She was a little unstable when she first took off, but she quickly mastered the flying-type soul tool's controls. Hu Yuhao had already become a small black dot on the horizon at this point. Wang Chua was a soul emperor after all, and she was a lot stronger than Hu Yuhao in terms of cultivation. She figured out the important parts before she began to speed up as much as she could, and she determined Hu Yuhao's direction of flight as she swiftly pursued him. There wasn't much cover in the sky, and Hu Yuhao had no intention of concealing his movements. Wang Chua flew through the air for a while before she gradually closed the distance. "This soul tool is quite interesting. It can actually fly through the air at such rapid speed. Interesting, interesting." Wang Chua's expression was filled with curiosity, and she continuously felt the transformations in her flying-type soul tool as she sped through the air. Hu Yuhao was flying in front, but he didn't have to turn back to look. He activated spiritual detection and immediately sensed Wang Chua, who had already caught up with him. "You're quite adaptable, huh? Follow me, then." He didn't bother with Wang Chua anymore as he began to study the map. The map clearly marked out the geographical relationship between Shrek Academy and his destination. The destination was within the Heavenly Soul Empire, and he had to travel east from Shrek Academy all the way to the Heavenly Soul Empire's Heaven-Do City, and then he would have to continue northeast. There was a place there where soul beasts resided, called the Setting Sun Forest. The Setting Sun Forest paled in comparison to the Great Star Do Forest, and it was inferior both in reputation and in surface area. However, this was still a forest inhabited by soul beasts. His final destination was located right within this Setting Sun Forest. Wang Chua had no experience with flying-type soul tools, but neither was she averse to using them. She took the milk bottle and attempted to use it in the way Hu Yuhao had described, and she suddenly felt a clean and pure energy flow into her body, and her soul power was swiftly restored. This can restore soul power? Your soul tool research has reached this level?" Wang Chua asked with a look of astonishment. Hu Yuhao wasn't in the mood to explain anything else, so he snapped, "Even if you've never tasted pork, I'm sure you've at least seen a pig before. Do you not know about milk bottles?" Wang Chua grunted coldly and said, "All I can see is a pig flying in the sky." Hu Yuhao extended 2 fingers and said, "2 pigs, you're the pig." Wang Chua's face flushed red. Hu Yuhao stopped talking because he had to conserve energy and focus on flying. Shrek Academy was quite far away from Heaven-Do City. They continued flying for another 2 hours, but then began to feel a little fatigued, even though they had milk bottles to replenish their soul power. Wang Chua realized that he was ignoring her and shot him a glare. She grunted coldly and said, "Who is it exactly that you're trying to save?" Hui Yuhao didn't respond. "Hey, I'm talking to you." Wang Chua nudged him. They were flying rapidly through the air, and Hui Yuhao was startled and almost lost his balance. He glared at her and said, "Just do it if you want to kill me. Can you stop spouting nonsense? I'm getting frustrated." Wang Chua was just about to erupt, but she held herself back for some reason. She grunted again, but said nothing more. The sky was already bright at this moment. It was a new day, and two very important people were suddenly missing from Shrek Academy's inner courtyard. "Yuhao? I haven't seen him. Didn't you send him back last night?" Bei Bei stared in confusion at the frustrated Wang Donga before him. Wang Donga had woken up early in the morning and gone to Hui Yuhao's room to see how he was recovering, while she also hoped to listen to his explanation about what had happened the previous day. But to her surprise, Hui Yuhao's room was empty when she arrived. His bed was messy, while he himself was nowhere to be seen. 2 hours later, inside the Sea God's Pavilion, nothing. "We've searched everywhere. He's not in the academy. I've sent people over to Shrek City, and nobody's seen Hui Yuhao recently." Elder Xian lowered his voice as he spoke. 6 of Shrek's 7 monsters were gathered at this moment. Hui Yuhao had gone missing, and this was a big deal to everybody. Elder Xian's eyes descended on Wang Donga as he said, "Did he say anything to you yesterday, Donga? What did he do?" Wang Donga had been worried for the entire morning, and her eyes were long since red. Hui Yuhao was still nowhere to be seen even though they had been searching for more than 2 hours, and she couldn't be any more worried than she already was. She was just anxious in the beginning, and then she was incensed, but all that was left in her heart right now was nervousness. She was even thinking that she wouldn't pursue anything about what had happened between him and Wang Chua yesterday if he could just return safely. What a kind-hearted girl. She tossed her head from side to side and said, "He was still asleep when I escorted him back to rest. However, his vitals had returned to normal. I should have stayed by his side. This is all my fault, all my fault." Wang Donga's voice was starting to break, and she was about to cry. Elder Xian said, "Don't be hasty. There's something odd about all this. We have discovered from our preliminary investigations that Hui Yuhao isn't the only person that has gone missing. Someone else has disappeared." Everyone was astounded. Was it possible that this other person was the key to finding Hui Yuhao? Elder Xian glanced at Wang Donga and said, "The other missing person is Wang Chua." Wang Donga felt as if a lightning bolt struck down on her when she heard that name. Her eyes turned black, then she stumbled forward, and would have fallen if Jiang Nannan hadn't been supporting her. Hui Yuhao had gone missing, and he had actually gone missing at the same time as Wang Chua. They. Wang Donga didn't dare to follow that train of thought. Xu Sanxi's eyes widened as he muttered softly under his breath, "Was I right? Maybe they really eloped." Bei Bei kicked him and whispered, "Shut your filthy mouth. Hui Yuhao isn't an unaccountable person. I think something is wrong." Elder Xian stared at Wang Donga's face, which had lost all color. "Bei Bei is right, I think something is wrong. Have you guys considered the possibility that Wang Chua has kidnapped him?" Elder Xian's words were like a lifeline to Wang Donga, and she immediately recovered as she stared at Elder Xian with widened eyes. Inside Clear Sky Castle, Niu Qian was tasting the fragrant wine in his cup when his eyes suddenly froze. "What's wrong?" Tiu Qian glanced at him curiously. Niu Qian frowned and said, "That's strange. How has the seal been opened so quickly? That's really strange." Tiu Qian was also surprised as he said, "Are you referring to that pouch that you gave her? It's probably Hui Yuhao if it's been opened." Niu Qian nodded, but he shook his head immediately afterwards and said, "It's not strange that Donga has given the pouch to him. Could you not tell when they returned the last time? Donga's heart is locked onto that fellow. What I find strange is, how does Yuhao have the ability to open that spiritual seal? Does that mean he sought someone else's help to open it?" Tiu Qian drank a mouthful of wine and said, "If it's open, then so be it. He will have to face our final test whether or not he found someone else to help him open it. In the end, the assessment doesn't just test his abilities. More importantly, it tests his love for Donga." Niu Qian said, "I'm not worried that he found someone to help open the seal, nor am I worried that he's found someone to help him find the yearning heartbroken grass. What I'm worried about is that he may have opened the seal by accident, and if that's the case, that place is simply too dangerous for him with his current cultivation. I'm afraid something might happen to him." Tiu Qian was a little confused. "I don't think so. That fellow is quite intelligent. Can he not retreat and run away if he realizes something is amiss? Besides, can your spiritual seal really be opened by accident? I think we should be more concerned about this fellow showing the letter's contents to Donga." Niu Qian heaved a faint sigh and said, "Forget it. We weren't the ones who came up with this test, anyway. Since the test has already begun, we will submit to fate." "Fate?" Tiu Qian gazed at the distant sky through the window, and an understanding smile appeared on his face. Niu Qian was momentarily stunned as he watched his brother's expression. Then he seemed to understand as well, and he smiled faintly as he stared at the clear blue skies outside. Yes? Fate. I'm not too hungry. You go ahead. Hui Yuhao's storage-type soul tool always carried some food and water. This was one of the ultimate soldier plan's main requirements. He handed some food and water to Wang Chua before he immediately continued to meditate. Wang Chua didn't push further, and she took the food and water and began to eat. She quietly stared at the cross-legged youth sitting before her as she ate. Am I going to venture with him into another world of soul beasts? It's only me and him this time. What does he want, exactly? The setting sun forest? How can that compare to the Great Star Doe forest? The quality of soul beasts in that area is far inferior to the even Great Star Doe forest's hybrid region. Perhaps we won't find a single 100,000-year soul beast over there. Every girl was born with a tendency to probe into other secrets and be nosy, and Wang Chua was no exception. She stared at Hui Yuhao, who was still meditating, and thoughts ran wild in her head. It didn't take long before she consumed all the rations in her hand. This tastes terrible. Wang Chua finished her food, but she couldn't help but mutter and criticize it under her breath. She thought to herself that this was a far cry from what he had made before. He makes really delicious food, though. Perhaps that's why Wang Donga likes him so much. Hui Yuhao meditated for 2 hours. He recovered some energy, and his heart was a little calmer than before. He knew that he wasn't in the right state of mind, and he kept telling himself to calm down after he finished meditating. The greater the danger he had to face, the calmer he had to be. Emotional disturbances would only make things worse and harder to deal with in the long run. That was one of the ultimate soldier plan's defining principles, and Hui Yuhao bore it in mind. He wouldn't have lost so much self-control if it hadn't been Wang Donga who was in mortal peril, because he was just too concerned about her safety. Wang Donga was simply too important to him, and it wasn't an easy task for him to ease his nerves in the face of this threat. Don't worry, Donga. Even if I have to face all the dangers in the world, I will help you get that herb and I will bring it back. Hui Yuhao wasn't hasty to get back on his way, and he fetched some food and water before he began to eat by himself. He wanted to be in his best condition to search for that herb. Wang Chua watched Hui Yuhao quietly consume his food, and she couldn't help but frown. This guy looks quite interesting when he's deep in thought. Hey, don't you have anything to say to me? I'm here to help you, Wang Chua spoke up, displeased. We'll settle this when we get back. Wang Chua wanted to put on a strong front even though she felt differently inside. Hui Yuhao stared at her seriously and said, then you're willing to help me? Yes, Wang Chua nodded and said, I'm already here. Am I supposed to just watch? The setting sun forest shouldn't have many powerful soul beasts, and we shouldn't run into any danger if we team up. The key question is, what exactly are you looking for? Looking for something inside a forest isn't easy. Do you have a target? Hui Yuhao's spirits were lifted when Wang Chua said she was willing to help him. He couldn't be bothered by his awkward relationship with her at a time like this. When Wang Donga's life hung in the balance, all he wanted to do was acquire that herb no matter what price he had to pay. Wang Chua's abilities were formidable, and they shared a martial soul fusion skill, the Dragon Roar of Destiny. Their martial soul fusion had even fended off that triple martial soul fusion. Ultimately, this expedition was a lot more likely to succeed with her around. I have a map, and this map has the rough location of what I need to find. We just have to search around for a bit when we get there, and that should be enough. Chua, let's not hurry into the setting sun forest. I still have the 3 left leg bones that we picked up from last time. Why don't we absorb 1 piece each, so that we can further boost our strength? He retrieved 2 wolfate left leg bones from his storage-type soul tool as he spoke. All right. Wang Chua didn't object. One of these things belonged to her anyway, and she took one before she sat down with her legs crossed. Hui Yuhao said, I'll protect you. You can go first, okay. Wang Chua made sure she was sitting properly cross-legged. She waved her right hand, and a golden streak of soul power enveloped the left leg bone. The left leg bone was entirely purplish-black in color, and it flickered with pale silver light. A deep dragon roar could be heard as the soul power on Wang Chua's body trembled, and a golden layer of light encompassed and permeated the entire bone immediately afterwards. Ding! A faint chiming sound could be heard, and the left leg bone transformed into a flowing purplish-black beam of light that drifted toward Wang Chua. It followed her golden soul power, and she directed it into her left leg before it disappeared. Purplish-black light circled twice around Wang Chua's left leg before it vanished, and her body began to shine with golden light once again. Hui Yuhao was standing guard for her, but even he could feel an immense pressure coming from her. What a powerful martial soul! Even though the Ice Jade Empress Scorpion was also an ultimate martial soul, Hu Yuhao could clearly feel that the Ice Jade Emperor's scorpion was still a little inferior to the Golden Dragon in terms of strength. Wang Qiu's Golden Dragon martial soul was probably at a higher level than the Dragon God Dolor's Radiant Holy Dragon and the Dragon Emperor Dolor's Darkness Holy Dragon, which meant that it was probably the purest inheritance of Dragon-type martial souls. Who knew how powerful she would be if she could become a titled Dolor one day? Hu Yuhao felt as if his body was a lot lighter than before when he jumped up from the ground, and his left leg felt exceptionally strong. He bounced on his feet, and he realized that his jumping strength had been greatly boosted. Have you tried its soul skill? Hu Yuhao asked Wang Qiu. Wang Qiu shook her head and said, let's try it together. They infused soul power into their respective wolf-shaped left leg bones at almost the same time. Silver light immediately flickered on their legs, and their bodies vanished into thin air in the next moment before they reappeared at their original locations. Both Hu Yuhao and Wang Qiu had a look of a pleasant surprise in their eyes. It was just as Hu Yuhao had hoped. The soul skill that they had obtained was Instant Shift. A soul skill like Instant Shift was like a life-saving trump card for any soul master. Even though the soul skills carried by soul bones could only be used for a fixed number of instances, this was already good enough to give them both a delighted surprise. Both Hu Yuhao and Wang Qiu would have never obtained this soul skill from their martial soul fusion skills, as Instant Shift was known as a top-tier agility-type soul skill, and neither of them were agility-type soul masters. Of all the soul masters that Hu Yuhao knew, only Jiang Nan possessed this ability. Hu Yuhao immediately attempted it once more. Silver light flickered beneath his feet, and he reappeared 10 meters away. The maximum distance is 10 meters. It's a little shorter than those wolf apes. Hu Yuhao had chosen a distance that was further away, but the instant shift had ended at 10 meters. It was clear that this was its maximum range. Wang Qiu appeared beside him in a flash. That's good enough, so you should be content. 10 meters may seem like a very short distance, but it's usually enough to turn the tables of a battlefield. Hey, why do I feel something peculiar when I'm next to you? Hu Yuhao also realized that his left leg began to warm up when Wang Qiu came next to him, as if Wang Qiu's left leg had become a magnet and was pulling on his own left leg. Part 1 end here.